And welcome everyone to another edition of the Radio Classics Interviews here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. This is Roger Hoover. Great to be with you. Hope everything's going well on this Friday afternoon. These interviews are always brought to you by Alabama One Credit Union. They've been voted Tuscaloosa's best credit union and mortgage lender. Alabama One offers low-rate auto, mortgage, and business loans, plus protection for it all with Alabama One Insurance. Visit any of their 9 local branches. You can also check them out online at alabama1.org. Alabama One, a proud supporter of Crimson Tide Athletics, and once again we have another classic game from the Saban era hitting the radio tomorrow across the state of Alabama, and this time it'll be the 2012 LSU game. Of course, the last game we had was another LSU game in the BCS title game in 2012 from the Superdome in New Orleans, but this game was in Baton Rouge, and the long snapper for the Crimson Tide in that game was Carson Tinker, who joins us now. Carson, how's everything going, man? Roll Tide.
Roll Tide, Roger. How you doing?
Doing really well, and of course you were part of such a great era of Crimson Tide football. And as we start to take a look back, first of all, just tell us your story and how you got to Alabama.
All right, so I walked on. I was recruited, but I was what's called a preferred walk-on. It's essentially walk-ons that they recruit. They don't quite do that anymore. Cole Mazza and Thomas Fletcher both were offered on scholarship, but I was the last recruited walk-on long snapper for Coach Saban.
And of course, from there, you're able to gain a starting spot and a long snapper. Had you always been a long snapper in high school? Kind of what was your high school football background?
Yeah, so I snapped in high school. I also played offensive tackle. We were in the wing T, so I didn't have to be very big. We were pulling and kicking a lot, but I snapped. I knew I wasn't going to play offensive tackle in college, so I really focused on my snapping skills. Went to a couple snapping camps, including Alabama has a specialist, high school specialist camp every year. Went down there and did pretty well at that camp, and Saban offered me a spot to walk on.
Just talking about long snapping for a second, what's the key to a good snap, whether it's for a field goal, extra point, or a punt? Kind of what's your mental process, and what do you have to do from there?
So for a punt, you don't want to make the punter move, so you try to put it on the right hip. You don't want him to have to step right or left and move, his momentum. Sometimes the punter will be offset, so if they're going to punt left, they'll offset a little bit to the right, so you still got to go for that right hip. And, if they're going left, or if they're punting right, they'll offset to a little bit to the left, and you still got to go for the right hip. So you don't want to make a move. You want to be in under 0.8 seconds. And then Alabama, they don't do this anymore, unfortunately, but you have to block somebody too. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to snap at Alabama, is because it was most like, snapping in the NFL. So you got to block somebody, and then for a field goal, you just want to right there, kind of on his down hand, put it right on his bicep, on the holder's bicep, and then 3.5 rotations, you want laces out, so he doesn't have to spin it once you put it on the ground.
What was practice like for you, making sure you're keeping your proper form? Was it a lot of time just on your own? How much was it with the specialist during Alabama's regular practices, or how much did you have to do kind of outside of practice?
So we were always getting better. I mean, I think the LSU specialists, they made like a Twitter account about how they don't do anything during practice, but Coach Saban always made sure that we were working hard, So that being said, we did kind of have to invent kind of our own drills. So we did some had some questionable drills that we do sometimes maybe, but we were always focused on improvement.
Well, going back to that 2011 season, obviously it was an emotional time for you, as we've talked before with Javier Arenas about his experience on April 27th, 2011. For you, obviously going through that very tough situation with your girlfriend in your house, how did you start to get back into a football mindset after the events of April 27th?
I think they were very kind of forefront in my mind. I needed something to kind of distract myself from what reality was for me at the time. So I always, focused on football and always, was focused on my health and improving. And because mentally I had some things I was working with, but physically I also had some things that I had to overcome. So I was, just put all my energy into getting better and getting ready to play football. So football was, my very top priority at the moment to just help me cope with everything.
Then Alabama gets off to a really good start that season, and that sets up the first of these three really classic games in a row in the series between Alabama and LSU. Going back to the quote-unquote game of the century, the game that was played in Tuscaloosa in 2011, what stands out to you the most about that night?
There was a lot of hype and not a lot of action on the field. Was it 6-6 going into the end of the game into overtime? I don't know. I feel like Coach Saban always did a pretty good job of not letting people kind of, let the game hype up, right? So, he's always made sure that we pay attention to the details and, what it takes to actually win the game. So, I love playing for Coach Saban. Anything he said, I try to do it, to my absolute best. So I tried to really downplay the game, but at the same time, when you hear about all the celebrities and stuff that were there, I think the only one I really remember at the time was Derek Jeter was there. And, what's Derek Jeter doing in Alabama, It's a long way from where he's from. So it's just, it was really cool because I guess that was the first probably – big game that I had played in. Like I was on the team for the 2009 national championship, but me personally playing in a game, that was huge.
Yeah, it certainly was, and really special teams is at the front of everybody's mind in that ball game with the field goals. Of course, all the scoring in that game were field goals. And what do you remember about some of those scoring plays that Alabama did have and some missed opportunities?
Be honest, I'd love to take play by play, but my memory is not that good. But I remember, and Coach Saban kind of told us this. Every opportunity is going to be huge, right? So every scoring opportunity, you got to make sure you take advantage of it. And I think we had a couple missed field goals that game, so that's something that you always look back on is missed opportunities. But I think we had missed opportunities all over the field, in that first game. And then, come back around, which I guess we're going to talk about here in a minute. We figured out how to, capitalize on those opportunities. I remember, and I might be getting ahead of myself, but I remember every, I guess, Thursday of the game week, Coach Cochran would have kind of like a message that he would give us. And the message after we lost LSU, or I think it was a couple weeks after, but anyway, someone that had climbed Mount Everest wrote Coach Saban a letter and said how he tried to climb Mount Everest before but had failed. So he listed 50 different things that he could have done better and then went and tried again, and he succeeded in climbing Mount Everest. And Coach Cochran really kind of told us that story, but then made sure that we all came up with 2 or 3 things that we could do, better individually and as a team. And I think that's what makes the difference in the game of the century and then the national championship is everybody just realized a couple of things that they could do better, and then we went out there and did it.
Yeah, you had to like the game plan, had to like the preparation for the national championship game in New Orleans as the offense was able to do its thing. And then this time, Alabama was able to really convert on all of those early field goal opportunities, build that lead until Trent was able to break it open later with the touchdown run.
Yeah, everything just came together, and it was a beautiful sight, man. Those are the games you love playing. Everything was firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, certainly a great moment and a big celebration for the Crimson Tide. And one of the toughest things to do in sports, they always say, is repeat as a champion, especially as a national champion. How was this team? We talked a little bit about this with Barrett Jones last week. How was this team able to refocus after climbing the mountain, climbing Mount Everest, like you talked about, winning a national championship? How do you get refocused for 2012?
Coach Saban, he's the greatest coach of all time, in my opinion. He told us flat out, what you did last year, it doesn't matter. And I think everybody, rebought back in, and it wasn't any easier. It was, harder for sure, because we had a target on our back, and we got everybody's best game. Everybody came and brought their best, but we came and brought our best game every week too. And I think that is the biggest thing is, we figured out a new way to have a chip on our shoulder. 2011, we definitely had a chip on our shoulder. But then 2012, we had a different kind of chip on our shoulder that year too. So, but all that is just a testament to how good of a coach Saban is.
And that really led to, again, the game we're going to have coming up on the radio tomorrow across the state of Alabama. 2012 LSU game. It was Alabama ranked number 1 off to an undefeated start. And really a lot of those games earlier in the season had not been that close. But then you get to Baton Rouge, and it's always a different story. When you're taking on a good LSU team, they were ranked 5th in the nation. What stands out to you about the beginning of that ball game? And, of course, it led to the great finish.
I love playing in Baton Rouge. I mean, Bryant Denny's obviously number 1. But playing in Death Valley is, I mean, God, if I tell anybody to go to a big game, it's Alabama LSU at either place. That's a true taste of college football. What I remember the most about the beginning of the game, when you're driving in, and I'm sure they did this on purpose, but like you drive in and you have to go all the way around the stadium to get to the locker room. So they were, shaking the bus, screaming at us, throwing stuff at us, throwing drinks at us. And it was like Gladiator, like the movie Gladiator. Because, we're all sitting on the bus, and we're all, dead silent. Like, that's one of my favorite, sounds of the game is I never was, like, a headphone guy or, like, a music guy. But everybody else, you could always hear everybody else's music, through their headphones. But I think everybody kind of turned their headphones off, and we were all just, dead silent, just looking at each other, just listening to everybody screaming. And that's just something that'll always stick with me. But what I remember about the game, so not a thing, actually. I remember that last drive, we were down, 3?
Yeah, 17-14, about a minute 34 to go.
Because I remember me and Shelly were on the sideline, and, obviously me and Shelly wanted to go out and kick, but, at the same time, we wanted to win the game. So I remember we were focused on that, and, you can't really get too emotional into the game because at the end of the day, you kind of have a job to do. But, we knew what was going on, man. It's hard to not get caught up in that. You just have to embrace it. But we wanted to kick the field goal, but obviously, I'm excited that we won. And I remember Dean Harden, he was the dean of the business school at the time. He came to LSU with us, and me and him were pretty close. And for whatever reason, he was the first guy that I saw in the locker room. He just jumped on me. He was so excited. And I was like, that's how we do it. That's how we do it. But, yeah, that was a fantastic game.
Yeah, really fantastic finish. And for A.J. McCarron, he had not been having that great of a game, especially in the fourth quarter. I think I heard that he had been 1 of 7, not many yards or anything like that up until those final moments, and he gets the screen pass to Yeldon. Touchdown Alabama. Crimson Tide go on to win 21-17. But for you getting to know A.J., knowing the kind of competitor he is, what did that mean for you to get to see him really thrive in that moment when everything was on the line?
Yeah, AJ's a baller. He always was, still is. He's like a good golfer. He's not going to do anything fancy, but at the end of the day, he's going to be 6 under par, and he's going to look great on the scorecard. He never had any super flashy plays, but AJ, man, he always got the job done, and you could always count on him. And I was proud of him. Obviously, I was proud to be his teammate, be his friend. And I remember, dude, just so many good jokes on the plane ride home, man. Because I remember he was dancing like a crazy man, and somebody's like, "Get that invisible fire off my friend" from Ricky Bob, and it was just it's weird stuff you remember, man. But yeah, that's winning the game was awesome, right? But it's just the stories of being out there with your friends and your teammates, and comeback victories. It's awesome.
That was a really emotional game, and then after that, the loss to Texas A&M. Going into that ball game, how tired were you guys? Because that, again, was an emotional roller coaster of a game the week before in Baton Rouge.
I don't think it was a matter of being tired. I think A&M, we probably underestimated Johnny Manziel a little bit. And, like I said, people bring their best game, and Johnny Manziel, he won the Heisman that game. That was the game of his career. So, huge props to him. But I remember, I don't want to say that we overlooked A&M. We knew Johnny and A&M. We knew they had a good team. But I remember watching Johnny on the field. But they went up 14-0, in a couple minutes, didn't they? And I remember we were on the field just being like, goodness gracious, that guy is fast. Just watch him on the sideline. Because, you do what you can, on the scout team during the week. But we didn't have anybody that played like Johnny Manziel. That was the only guy that's ever done anything like that. And when you get used to chasing the guy on scout team, and then the guy that you're playing against, Johnny Manziel, is twice as fast as the fastest guy that we could find for scout team. It's I think we had Christian Jones in for Johnny Manziel on the scout team, and I mean that was one of the best punt returners we had at Alabama. But Johnny Manziel is incredible.
Yeah, he certainly was, and kind of similar to the year before, you guys are able to refocus after that, of course, win the Iron Bowl, and then get ready for another game we'll have coming up during our Radio Classic series, the Georgia game and the SEC Championship game. The Crimson Tide were able to get back there, and that was another kind of thriller to the final minutes. This time, though, it was Georgia that had the ball, and what a thrilling moment that must have been to win in Atlanta like that on that stage.
Yeah, Georgia. So that was a game-winning punt. Everybody, loves to talk about a game-winning field goal and scoring points, but we started off their 4-minute drive with I think it was a 50 or 60-yard punt. Cody Mandel pinned them inside the 20, and that's where they started with a minute 24. So being able to flip the field, to help win the game on special teams. I mean that was one of the highlights of my career. I remember I climbed up in the stands after the game and gave my dad a hug and just started crying, man, like a little baby. But that was definitely one of my favorite games. I mean, LSU was awesome and all that, but I don't know if I'd have like a favorite game in my career. But I mean, that Georgia SEC championship game was something real special for me.
And that it had to be special as well. That leads us right to another game that'll be coming up in a few weeks here on the network. The Notre Dame game down in South Beach as the Crimson Tide. The Georgia game, you got to play a really close game. That turned out to be the last close game you played in your Alabama career. Just what a thrilling night that must have been to see the game plan come together and Alabama really win the ball game from the very early stages against Notre Dame.
Yeah, like I talked about earlier, firing on all cylinders. That was just a game that we came in and nobody had a chance that night. We were ready to play, and we could have played. I don't know. I don't want to say it. We could have beat an NFL team because that's just I don't want. But we came ready to play, and we played lights out, man.
Certainly a great night for the Crimson Tide, and for you, the next step was the NFL. After the draft, you're able to sign with the Jacksonville Jaguars and have a solid career snapping in the NFL. What was your experience like in Jacksonville?
I loved it, man. Playing in the NFL was a great experience. It was a lot different than college for a lot of reasons, but it's still football, and it still had just a ton of fun, a ton of memory. Met a lot of great people. NFL is definitely an experience.
How much did your Alabama time really prepare you for the NFL? We always hear people say that Alabama is kind of the most NFL-like program there is in college football. Do you think that's pretty accurate?
I definitely think it's accurate. I think when I came out especially, I think that there's a lot of schools now that you could probably compare, Ohio State, Clemson, LSU. I mean, any of the big-time schools that are, constantly competing at the top, they're all run like a professional program. But like I said earlier, being able to block on punt, that was the biggest thing that helped me at Alabama. Coming from a pro-style punt protection, I didn't really learn anything or have a lot of learning to do. There wasn't a learning curve. There was definitely like a physicality curve. Like the strongest guy that I ever went up against at Alabama in my whole career, that's what it was like every single play in the NFL. So it was definitely I had to get a lot stronger and a lot bigger and tougher, my first couple years in the NFL. But, coming from Alabama certainly prepared me physically. I just had to prepare myself even more physically. I'm not trying to knock Cochran. I'll tell you what, I'm sure you'd like if I knocked Cochran since he went to Georgia now. But I've actually talked to Coach Cochran since then, so there's no bad blood. I love that guy. And but anyway, Alabama definitely prepared me for the NFL. Sorry for the tangent.
No, you're definitely good. And, of course, people in Alabama are excited that Coach Cochran is now going to have the chance to fulfill one of his dreams and be an on-the-field coach. Do you think he'll be successful at Georgia and then maybe one day be a head coach? Yeah,
I mean, Coach Cochran, Coach Saban, Kirby Smart, all those guys, they would have been successful no matter what they chose to do. If Coach Cochran said he's going to go get his PhD or whatever, be a medical doctor, be a big-time Wall Street guy, I'd believe him, So if he wants to go be a special teams coach, if he wants to go be a head coach, then he's going to give it everything he has, and he's going to do a great job.
So since your playing career came to an end in the NFL, what have you been up to, and what are you doing these days?
Yeah, so let's see. 2 years ago, I tore my ACL and both my meniscus. Rehab, got right. Um, Made the team again, and then the fifth game of the year, I tore my meniscus again. So just bad luck or whatever you want to call it. A couple of years. So right now, yeah, I'm taking a break. If opportunity comes, I'm definitely gonna take advantage of it. But right now, man, my body feels great. I'm enjoying the time with my family. Um, what am I doing right now? So I'm working for a sports marketing agency in Houston, Texas. I'm loving that. I'm meeting a lot of really cool people and really just helping kind of do activations and marketing events in the sports world, which was one of my favorite things about playing football anyways, getting to help people and getting to help kids and, seeing kids, get to interact with football players. I feel like football, just kind of gives you a platform, or sports in general give you a platform to help people. So I'm kind of doing that now, but on the other side. So I'm really enjoying it and, man, loving life. I got a 2-year-old now. So we're constantly trying to find new and creative ways to keep him entertained during this quarantine. I told you that I was going on a bike, so
Yeah.
he's got a seat where he sits on the back, and he's usually good for about an hour, hour and a half nap if we go on a bike ride. So that's why I got to make sure I wear sunscreen. I got sunscreen all over my face. If y'all are watching the video, don't think I'm wearing makeup. It's just some sunscreen that I couldn't wash off. But yeah, man, I'm enjoying every minute of life right now. I'm in a great spot. Just seeing what opportunities will open up.
Have you been able to get back to Tuscaloosa very much or taken any of the games in recent years?
No, I have not. Usually, when I came back to Tuscaloosa was in the off season. Tommy Ford was trying to get me down there every year, but we always had a bye week that would match up. So we'd always have the same bye week. But man, every time I do go back in the off season, I don't recognize anything in Tuscaloosa. It exploded. I still keep up with a lot of the guys down there. I was keeping up with the coaches, but I mean, there's barely any coaches down there. I linked up with Jeff Allen. Jeff Allen's still down there, but I actually linked up with him in Houston when they were out here for Tua's surgery. So I got to meet Tua. Man, what a guy, what a family. But I keep touch, with everybody I can, and I want to make it back to Tuscaloosa. And there's a lot of restaurants that I got to try out that are new. I was talking to Kareem Jackson the other day. He's out here in Houston. He was telling me that he opened up a wing spot down on the strips. I know there's a lot of good food. I think AJ opened up a sushi restaurant. Yeah, I'm just getting free publicity all over the place, man. These guys are gonna throw me a bone later, but yeah, there's a lot of good things that I want to check out. And man, Tuscaloosa is just an awesome place, and it always have a special place in my heart. First thing I'm gonna go do is eat at City Cafe and see Miss Becky though. So
Yeah, you're making me hungry right now. So as we start to wrap things up, any final message to the Crimson Tide fans that are watching on our Facebook page or on the Alabama Athletics Facebook?
man, you know what? Thanks for being fans. Roll Tide. Y'all make Alabama great, man. My time playing in Alabama was God, just an awesome experience, and it was because of fans like you that are listening and getting all the info they can around their favorite sport and their favorite team. So I appreciate you guys so much. Roll Tide.
All right, roll Tide, Carson. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, man.
All right, that was Carson Tinker. We certainly thank him. We thank Alabama One Credit Union for making this interview possible. We'll have a lot of guests coming up next week, so make sure you stay tuned right here to the Crimson Tide Sports Network.